Barbara Walters built a career on reading people, on knowing in seconds who had real depth and who was performing it. Matthew Perry spent years proving that comedy is a craft, not a gift. That every laugh is built, not stumbled into. Tony Bennett sang until he was 95. He didn't slow down because he couldn't stop. He continued because the work itself was the point. David Bowie reinvented himself so many times that reinvention became his truest form of consistency. Gene Hackman was the actor other actors studied, someone who made discipline look like instinct. Angus Cloud arrived with almost no formal training and still managed to make every scene feel completely inhabited and true. Picture a soundstage at Pinewood, Atlanta, sometime in the mid-2000s. The cameras are not rolling yet. The crew is still setting lights. And Samuel L. Jackson is already there, off to the side, not on his phone, not in a chair with his name on it. He's running lines. Not because he doesn't know them, he knows them. He's running them because he wants to find the one syllable he hasn't tried yet. That habit, the quiet, almost invisible discipline underneath the thunder, is where this story really begins. Samuel Leroy Jackson was born on December 21st, 1948, in Washington, D.C., and raised in Chattanooga, Tennessee, by his mother and maternal grandparents. His father was largely absent. His mother, Elizabeth, worked in a factory and then as a personnel manager. The household was not rich, but it was not without structure or expectation. Jackson grew up in the segregated South, attending segregated schools, watching the civil rights movement not on television, but through the windows of his own neighborhood. That context, the texture of a world arranged against you, would later inform every character he played who had to hold their ground or fight just to be seen. He was a stutterer as a child. The stutter was significant enough that it shaped how he related to language, not as something easy or automatic, but as something that required management, will, and technique. Some people who stutter learn to fear words. Jackson learned to master them. He discovered early that if he swore, if he let a strong word anchor the rhythm of a sentence, the stutter receded. That is not a small biographical footnote. That is the origin story of one of the most distinctive vocal performances in the history of American cinema. The cadence people recognize instantly, that deliberate percussive weight he gives to language, was forged in the effort to control a stutter in a small Tennessee town, decades before anyone knew his name. He enrolled at Morehouse College in Atlanta in 1966, originally intending to study marine biology. He switched to drama. The decision was not a rebellion, it was a recognition. He had found the thing. During his time at Morehouse, he became involved in the civil rights movement in a way that went beyond attending rallies. In 1969, he was part of a group of students who held members of the Morehouse Board of Trustees hostage, including Martin Luther King Sr., to protest the lack of black representation on the board. He was suspended from school for 2 years. He used that time to go to Atlanta, to work, to keep acting. He returned and graduated in 1972. What followed was not a rocket launch. It was a long, deliberate climb up the side of a mountain with no guarantee of the summit. Through the 1970s and into the 1980s, Jackson worked in Atlanta's theater scene, honing technique in the way that only repetition in front of live audiences can teach. Then he moved to New York. He did stage work. He did small television roles. He was in the background. He was in the margins. He was building something that nobody could see the shape of yet. His friendship with Spike Lee opened a door. Lee cast Jackson in several films through the late 1980s. School Days, Do the Right Thing, Mo Better Blues, Jungle Fever. The role in Jungle Fever in 1991, Gator, the crack-addicted brother, is the one that cracked the ceiling. It is a performance that is genuinely difficult to watch, not because it is gratuitous, but because it is completely undefended. Jackson plays a man in total collapse, and he does it without vanity and without distance. There is no protective irony in the performance. He just goes there. Spike Lee was so moved by it that he created a new category at the Cannes Film Festival that year specifically for Jackson, the Supporting Performance Prize. That is not a thing that happens. Jackson made it happen. Here is where the story should have accelerated into a clean upward arc. It didn't. The early 1990s were also when Jackson's addiction to alcohol and crack cocaine reached its most dangerous point. His wife, LaTanya Richardson, found him unconscious at home. He entered rehab in 1991. He came out clean. And then he went back to work. Immediately. Not eventually, not after a period of recovery and reflection that allowed him to slowly re-enter the industry. Immediately. Patriot Games in 1992, Amos and Andrew in 1993, Jurassic Park in 1993, Menace to Society in 1993. He was making up for time in real time, and the sobriety wasn't a new version of him, it was the full version, finally unobstructed. Then came Pulp Fiction. Quentin Tarantino wrote Jules Winfield with Jackson in mind. The character required someone who could make a biblical passage about divine wrath feel like a genuine threat, who could deliver a speech about hamburgers with the gravitas of a philosopher, who could be funny and terrifying and morally complicated within the same scene. Jackson did not just meet those requirements, he redefined them. The film came out in 1994, won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, and became a cultural and cinematic landmark. Jackson's performance was widely considered one of the best in the film. He was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. He did not win. He should have. That is not a provocative opinion. It is the settled consensus of most people who have watched the category in retrospect. The loss is still cited regularly in discussions about the most egregious Academy Award misses in modern history. He did not pause to grieve the loss. He moved. Die Hard with a Vengeance, A Time to Kill, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Hard Eight, Eve's Bayou, which he also produced, Jackie Brown, The Negotiator. He was everywhere, and the interesting thing about being everywhere in that period was that he was not simply filling space. Each of these films contains something specific that Jackson is doing, a choice, a moment, a stillness, or an explosion that is clearly intentional. He was not coasting on the Pulp Fiction glow, he was working. The Star Wars prequels brought him to a different scale of audience. Mace Windu is not, on paper, the richest character in the trilogy. Jackson asked George Lucas for a purple lightsaber so that he could find himself in the crowd during the big battle sequences. Lucas agreed. The purple lightsaber became one of the most talked-about design choices in the franchise, and Jackson's presence gave Windu a gravity the character might not otherwise have carried. He was doing what skilled actors do inside franchise work, finding the one specific thing he could control and making it matter. Then came Nick Fury. When Marvel began building the architecture of what would become the MCU, they needed a figure who could hold the whole structure together during the assembly sequences, someone the audience would trust to stand in a room with any combination of characters and not be overwhelmed. They cast Jackson. He appeared in the post-credits scene of Iron Man in 2008 and has appeared in more films in the franchise than perhaps any other actor. He does not play Nick Fury as a sideman. He plays him as the axis. The role required Jackson to take a character who exists largely in service of plot mechanics and make him feel like someone with an inner life. He did it. He does it every time. The volume of his output is genuinely staggering and often used as a shorthand for something superficial, a punchline about how many movies he makes.
But the quantity argument
misses the point. Jackson has said publicly that he works constantly, partly because acting is the thing that replaced addiction for him. The discipline, the ritual, the daily structure of being on a set. Work is not just production for him. It is maintenance. It is the practice that keeps everything else in order. Understanding that reframes the volume. It is not prolific in the loose sense. It is prolific in the way that an athlete trains, consistently, deliberately, because stopping is not an option. There are films in his catalogue that are undervalued relative to the performance he gives. Unbreakable, M. Night Shyamalan's 2000 film, contains one of Jackson's most internal and measured performances. He plays Elijah Price, a man defined by physical fragility and intellectual obsession, and he does it with a restraint that runs counter to everything the audience expects from him. The stillness in that performance is a technical achievement. You can feel him choosing not to do the obvious thing in every scene. Glass, the 2019 follow-up, let him return to the character, and he did so with the same care, nearly 2 decades later. Django Unchained in 2012 gave him a role of genuine moral complexity. Stephen, the house slave who has internalized and weaponized the system that oppresses him. It is a villain built from historical reality, from the specific psychology of survival under oppression that sometimes curdles into complicity. Jackson plays him with no apology and no wink at the audience. He commits completely, and the discomfort that commitment creates is exactly the point. The film generated debate about its treatment of slavery, but within that debate, Jackson's performance was rarely questioned. It is exactly what it needs to be. The Hateful Eight, in 2015, also Tarantino, gave him a full lead role in an ensemble. Top billed, the engine of the film's tension from the first scene. He was 66 years old.
he is in that film.
One of the most commanding presences on screen he has ever been, which is saying something given the competition the role puts him against. In 2022, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences gave Jackson an honorary Oscar, the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award, companion piece to an honorary award for lifetime achievement that had been widely discussed for years prior. The Academy acknowledged that the body of work warranted recognition beyond any single performance. He received it with the directness you would expect. He did not pretend to be overwhelmed. He accepted it as confirmation of something he had known for a long time. He holds the record, by a significant margin, for the highest-grossing actor in box office history when you aggregate the global ticket sales of films in which he has appeared. The number is well over $27 billion. That figure is sometimes deployed to make a joke. It should be used instead to make a point. No actor in the history of cinema has appeared in that volume of commercially successful work without a corresponding level of craft. Audiences go to films partly because of who is in them, and they have been choosing Samuel L. Jackson for 50 years. He is still working. He has said, in multiple public contexts, that he has no intention of stopping. The Sam Wilson version of Nick Fury has given him new territory in the MCU. He continues to take roles in streaming, in film, in projects that interest him, with the same apparent appetite he brought to the post-rehab sprint of the early 1990s. The stutter is not gone, but it was never the obstacle. It was the training, the discipline of managing language with precision, of finding the rhythm inside the sentence before the sentence arrives, is still there in every performance, refined over more than 5 decades into something that looks, to an audience, like pure, effortless authority.
It is not effortless.
It never was. That's what makes it last.